Hello, my name is Simon. I am a producer, engineer, guitarist, whatever you want to call me. One issue that I have with Reaper, as I have with many DAWs, is that they don't come with a stock dynamic EQ. And I think that's quite sad because a dynamic EQ is something that you tend to want to use quite a lot in your mixes. But Reaper doesn't prohibit you from creating your own dynamic EQ, just using the stock tools that are available. And that's exactly what I have done. So I want to show it to you right now. So here in Reaper, I've set up quite a basic project here just to show off what the dynamic EQ can do. This is the dynamic EQ. You can see in the track here that this is actually contained within an effects container so that it looks just like a standard plugin. But when you open it up, it's actually a bunch of effects containers and stuff contained within that makes it work. I guess I'll tell you a little about how I created this dynamic EQ. I first had to sort of understand how a dynamic EQ works. I haven't done any real research, but I have come to my own conclusions. My conclusion is that each band must have its own process that is listening to that frequency that you dialed in the EQ, and then create some sort of envelope that makes it go down in gain, up and down, depending on the volume of whatever input goes into it. So contained within this FX container, I've got this logic module here. I've got what I call the interface. It's just a Reaper EQ, but it's the interface. And then I have the controls section here. This is just a basic JS plugin that I've created. You can see the code here. It does absolutely nothing. It's just a bunch of dummy faders. This is controlling other stuff within this effects container using parameter modulations. And by having everything in this little plugin here, I have direct control of everything without having to go into any other menus and stuff. And then in this group here, we have what I call the logic module. Here we have another set of effects containers, one for each band, and they are basically duplicates of each other. So what they're doing is that the input signal goes into one of these containers. Here I've got a low amount, which is just a gain plugin, and that gain plugin is what this little controls thing is controlling. So when I turn this low band amount, you can see that this is affecting the gain in here. And then the second thing that I have in each band is this. This is another re-EQ where I have a band pass filter. And this is just a way to filter the input signal to whatever band the band is supposed to be listening to. So in this case, we're in the low band group. So I've got this band pass to the low band. And then that filtered signal is going into an envelope follower. This is also something I sort of haphazardly sort of created. And here you can set up the attack time, the release time, and then the result of this envelope follower is going to be shown in this envelope output. So you can see when I start playing my drums here, you can see here that the envelope output starts to move. And this envelope output is connected to the gain of my EQ here via a parameter modulation. So this envelope output is modulating this gain on the re-EQ. And this process has then been duplicated across 4 bands. Theoretically, you could have as many bands as you want, but there's a lot of really tedious setup process. So I thought like 4 bands, that's more than enough. And you can see here that the envelope output here is controlling the gain on the re-EQ. If I turn on the drums again, you can see that. And that's basically everything that is going on under the hood of this dynamic EQ. It's really nothing special. It's just a really neat little thing I did. It's basic processing, right? But what makes it special is that it's done just with stock plugins. I think that's really cool. Now I'm just going to do a little demo. I'm going to put some drums through it, some vocals and some bass, and we'll see how it reacts to them. And I'll show you how this controls thing works as well. Before I start going into the drums, I'll show you just briefly what these settings are doing. So for each band, I have 2 faders in this component here. So I got low band amount, low band attack, low mid band amount, low mid band attack, and then so on. And what the amount is doing is that it's just saying how much of the dynamic EQing do you want. And then the attack is just the attack of the envelope followers. It's pretty simple. It's also possible to put a release fader in here if you want to as well. So I will make this dynamic EQ available to download in the description. So if you want to play around with this on your own, maybe add a few more functions or maybe just play around with how it works, then you can absolutely do that. Now I will go into the drums here. So let's listen to these drums and see what the dynamic EQ is doing. So let's say that I want that resonance of the snare drum to be attenuated dynamically. So let's see how I will go about doing that. The resonance of that snare drum exists somewhere around here in the low mids. So it would make sense to use the low mid amount. I also don't want any other frequencies to be affected. So I will turn down the amount of all other bands. Once I've done that, you can see that only the low mid band right here is going to move. All right, now to get rid of that resonance in the snare, let's just play around a little bit and see how far we can get. Yeah, it works just like a dynamic EQ. It's just a little tedious to use it, I guess, because yeah, it's not designed, a re-EQ is not designed to be a dynamic EQ, but it works. So, yeah, I think this is amazing. Let's move on to vocals now. For the vocals, I've got Sofia Popek, which is one of my collaborators. This is the vocals for a chorus in a song that she never released. One of the issues with this recording is that there's a lot of S's, a lot of sibilances in the vocal. And that's a really typical thing that you do with a de-esser or a dynamic EQ. So let's see if we can get rid of some of those S's using this dynamic EQ.
Weapons, I wear my heart as weapons, always on a defense, armed for a war. Weapons, I wear my heart as weapons, always on a defense, armed for a war. Weapons, I wear my heart as weapons, always on a defense, armed for a war.
There we go. We've attenuated the sibilances in this vocal using stock Reaper plugins. This is just plain fucking cool. I think so, at least. Maybe I'm just a nerd. Let's see how this works on bass now. One of the things in this recording of the bass is there's a lot of mid-range. I want to get rid of some of that mid-range dynamically. So let's see if we can do that with this dynamic EQ. I think this is one of those instances where you want to use some of this attack functionality of this dynamic EQ, because the really fast attack doesn't do any service to this bass. I think a more subtle processing of the bass here is going to be the thing to do. There we go, we have successfully attenuated that nasty mid-range out of that electric bass, all with stock plugins. So if you think that this dynamic EQ is cool enough to use yourself, I've left a download link in the description so you can play around with this on your own. If you ever make any changes to this dynamic EQ to make it work more efficiently or improve some of the user interface or anything like that, please leave a comment in the description, because I'd love to hear what you choose to do with this. I think there's a lot of potential here. I will admit that this dynamic EQ wasn't really the most pretty or efficient dynamic EQ you can use, but it was more so just a fun experiment to test the Reaper's capabilities. Now, if you found this video just because you wanted to find a dynamic EQ that you can use for free in your projects, this is not the dynamic EQ to use. This is something you use if you're a nerd. If you just want a free dynamic EQ that works well and is efficient, there are two options that I know of that you can use. We have the Tokyo Dawn Labs Nova, completely free. And one dynamic EQ that I found quite recently is the ZL Equalizer. That is actually very feature rich and it's completely free. It has like mid-side processing, frequency matching, linear phase functionality, and all of those kinds of advanced stuff that you'd only expect from like expensive plugins, like stuff from Isotope or whatever. That's my top recommendation if you're looking for just a free dynamic EQ to use. But really you should download both Tokyo Dawn Labs and the ZL Equalizer because they're equally as good and they're both completely free, so there's really no harm in downloading both of them. Now if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe if you want to. Yep, that's it for me. Goodbye.